Hello there, and a warm, festive greeting for this 245th edition of DF Direct Weekly, our weekly show where we discuss the latest gaming and technology news. I've already gone on vacation, as you can see by my adjusted background. However, content never sleeps, and we must do one final push, one final direct before the end of the year. Joining me on this auspicious occasion, first of all, John Linneman. Hello.
Rich, how's it going? I'm here to remind you that you have less than 2 weeks to switch your Stadia controller to Bluetooth mode.
What?
So
wait, what?
That's a PSA for everyone who owns a Stadia controller. You've got until December 31st, 2025 before you lose the chance forever.
Right. What about my OnLive controller?
Oh, that's too late.
Or your Oya controller. Wait, John, what is this about? By the way, I'm here, everybody. Nice to see you all on this fateful day.
Hello, Alex.
Hi,
Alex.
Time, last one before the beginning of the new year. But John, what is this about? Can you explain?
I mean, Stadia, if you recall, they sold a controller. Google sold a controller for Stadia. And the way it worked was very specific. Like the controller was connecting to something. I forget how that all worked, but essentially you couldn't just use that controller as it was on another device. But they've added something where using through the web browser, you can essentially switch the controller to Bluetooth mode. I don't know why it has to be done in this amount of time, but there is they're shutting down all things Stadia by the end of the year. You need the web browser to enable Bluetooth mode. And so once that service goes offline completely, you can no longer do it, and the controller becomes a paperweight.
I think there may well be third-party tools that do it, and have been for some time. But yes, the official cutoff point for those with Stadia controllers, it's coming up.
It's coming up, guys.
We must be prepared. With that, shall we move on to our first news topic? Let's do it. But before we do that, a quick shout out, of course, to our brand new website, www.digitalfoundry.net. Do check that out. And of course, if you fancy wearing clothes that have our logos on it and supporting the team at the same time, please do check out store.digitalfoundry.net for our merchandising wares. But let's move on to our first news topic. Okay, so I don't really think we can call this a news topic as such. It's more like a sort of, how can I describe it? There's been like a sort of growing momentum of rumours for some time now. Oliver's talked about it in the past, suggesting that Half-Life 3 may well be upon us. There have also been a whole bunch of rumours suggesting that there would be a reveal of some sort, a trailer, before the end of the year. And we're kind of reaching the end of the year now, and it doesn't look as though it's happening. So the question remains, is there actually going to be a Half-Life 3? Some people I've spoken to just can't believe it's happening. Others believe it's a done deal. This week, we actually had the Insider Gaming podcast talking about this. And journalist Mike Straw talked about what's happening allegedly with Half-Life 3, which is to say that it is a thing, it is happening, it is supposed to launch in concert with the Steam machine next year. The question is, what's actually happening with Steam machine at the moment in the face of the quote-unquote DRAM crisis? I'm not really sure what too much more we can add to this, to be honest. I guess it's going to be announced when it's going to be announced. And it's the same with Steam Machine and its release. I think that is tentatively supposed to be Q1 2026. But that seems to be the reason, if there is one, that Half-Life 3 has not been announced. John, what do you make of all of this?
I mean, it all seems fairly clear cut at this point that we will see this at some point, and everything is simply held up because of the RAM situation. And we're still not sure what that means for the launch of the Steam machine. The timing could not have been worse for Valve. But they're in such a position that they can essentially release and announce Half-Life 3 whenever they want, right? Like they could sit on this for years if they wanted. I hope they do not do that, but they certainly could. But it's pretty obvious that this is a game that's going to sell regardless. It doesn't need to be tied to the Steam machine, but I can see the potential of announcing it alongside a Steam machine release, just as like sort of, it basically offers that similar, incentive as a console launch game. But it's like, hey, you get your brand new Steam machine, you pop that in your living room, and hey, you can play Half-Life 3 on it. And I think that's pretty compelling, actually. Right?
Yeah.
So
it's
I can definitely see a purpose there.
It also sounds reasonable to me from a hardware perspective. Just they specifically spec this thing out with certain functions. Like they even tout like, oh, unlike the normal AMD, when they ever talk about their stuff, they said like, oh, this supports ray tracing now. I would not be surprised if Half-Life 3 has some form of ray tracing in it.
Maybe.
There's also, you want to hype the fact that Half-Life 3, kind of like Half-Life 2 before it, did target lower spec stuff to a certain degree, and debatable whether or not Half-Life 2 ran really well on lower spec stuff. But Half-Life 3,
not that debatable, Alex.
it wasn't very good. But Half-Life 3, I presume, if it's anything like Half-Life Alyx, will probably fly on a lower end machine. Half-Life Alyx was very performant. And I think the Steam machine's specs lend itself to a good experience in a more recent Valve title, which, let's be honest, they haven't targeted the ultra high end for years now. So I think it all lines up. I'm just really curious what happens. How do they announce it if they don't tie it to a really cheap Steam machine launch anymore, because there can't be a cheap Steam machine anymore. I don't know how and when they announce it at all. Also, release date, if it was supposed to be early next year, like March-ish or so, do you just release the game without the Steam box now? Like, what do you do?
You just release the Steam box and put it at a higher price.
Yeah.
Just accept that it's got to be that way. They can't, there is no real scenario for them to just wait this out. This is not going to end quickly, right? So they either bite the bullet and just release it at a higher price than maybe they wanted to, or they cancel it, basically, which I don't think they would do. But you can't say, well, let's just wait 6 months and see what happens, because I really don't think it's going to make any difference at all. So they're really in a difficult position. Everyone is right now, thanks to AI. Wonderful. But I'm curious about the game itself. Like, Valve always tries to push the envelope with each big Half-Life release, doing something unique that hasn't really been the norm. And I really feel like, based on rumors and where I could see them going, the thing that's intrigued me the most from those various rumors is this idea of a game focusing on granular interactions and like lots of like large scale sort of like AI driven stuff. Not AI in that sense, but like, artificial intelligence of the enemies and NPCs in the game. So like, the way they behave around the player, the way things within the environment react to the player, there's some potential there for very cool interactive stuff. That sort of, builds on the whole idea. Half-Life since 2 has really focused a lot on like interactions and physics, but now they have a chance to take it to the next level. And after Half-Life Alyx, that game was so built on that sort of concept, because you were physically interacting with it using the hand controllers. So what will they do now? I feel like you can't walk it so far back, but you've got to make it applicable to a 2D screen again. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see what they do here, because that's the thing about a Half-Life game at this point, based on its history, is that they always do something a bit different. It's not just another sequel. It's usually something that is unexpected and cool and often revolutionary. I mean, the more I think about it, like Half-Life Alyx, I think, was one of the coolest games of the last decade. It's so good. It's really good. I liked it a lot at the time, but I've come to like it even more now. And I really think like the things that it does, I wish more people could have experienced it. And I guess with Half-Life 3, that will no longer be an issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one of the defining points of Half-Life Alyx, is that it was actually a really performant game. You didn't require monstrous GPUs. It was just really clever design from the tech art side of things that produced some phenomenal effects.
Beautiful baked lighting.
And I can absolutely see the same thing happening. What do you think,
Yeah,
Alex?
I could see it being very much that case. Like John just said, just maybe an extensive usage of cleverly baked lighting for smaller scenes and whatnot. Like you just go in a small little room in Half-Life Alyx and everything is pristine looking from a lighting perspective, though it would maybe clash with some higher level interactivity. So I'd be curious to see what they would do to unify lighting in that scenario. Like John, I would be hoping actually that's what the game would focus on. We've seen games with really pretty pixels for a long time now, but games that allow you to actually do something unique with the AI and maybe physicalized interactions, those are actually kind of rare, especially in the AAA space, which this game definitely belongs to. I was just looking not too long ago at videos by Marfidimus Black, or Marfy Black, if you've ever seen the Slappy Cromwell. John referenced one of his videos in the DF Turok Retro EX episode with Club Turok. He made that. But he always goes back and looks at the weird, because Half-Life 1 actually did try an experiment with like a more systemic AI approach, but it didn't fully ship in the final product. And I think, if they took ideas from back then and kind of brought them up to much more higher fidelity, as well as just, you can actually have physics now, unlike back then. You could do some really cool stuff that we haven't seen in many games, probably since like the Xbox 360 generation. And I would love if it did focus on those things, less so pretty pixels, which, like I said, we have so many pretty pixel games now. It's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the Steam machine, we just don't know really the extent of this crisis, the extent to which it's actually there or not. But we do have some perspective from Edward Chrysler, PR manager for Sapphire. Now, Sapphire obviously make AMD graphics cards, and he sat down with Hardware Unboxed in a recent podcast and basically said this: I truly believe that within 6 to 8 months, we're going to see the market begin to stabilize. Now, it may not be the prices we want, but I think some of the uncertainty is going to disappear and we're going to see a stabilization. So I tell people, don't become Chicken Little with this. I'm not sure I understand that reference, but 6 to 8 months is still a really long time to actually not have any idea what's going on. I think we kind of want some sort of clarification. I think in terms of releasing the Steam machine, I think, as long as Valve is transparent about the reasons behind pricing, then, why not release it? And people can either buy it or they can't buy it. I think at this point, nobody is expecting a machine with 24 gigabytes to launch at $400 anymore, or $500 or whatever. So, it is going to be a case. It might be a slightly more muted launch because it won't be a value-ific box in line with like a PS5 digital edition or whatever. But I think the market now understands the situation that we're in. And, I think as long as there's transparency from Valve, it will happen. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. Alex?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't as well, just like you. And at this point in time, maybe just bite that bullet and just some clarity from actually any manufacturer at this point in time would be great, because they know about orders, they know about all these things, sure. But it's always played by, you have to kind of like secondary source every single thing. And you only know about it by refreshing the price of RAM on Amazon or Newegg every Monday morning. And that's the only really clear sense of things that you get. And I find that a bit of a shame. As a consumer, that you only can really figure out about the market through that means, but that's the way it is.
Before we move on, though, I do want to quickly say, if you're hungry for Half-Life, one thing I'd recommend, I did recently, because it's the fall period, I always like to replay bits of Half-Life 2. It's very nostalgic for me at this point. And this year, I combined DXVK with Special K. The creator of Special K is over on the DF Discord, by the way. Super, super cool dude. To get proper HDR in the game.
Oh, cool.
And, you disable Valve's own tone mapper and HDR that they added, because Special K handles that for you. But playing on a proper HDR monitor in HDR really breathes new life into the game. And I recommend everyone give it a shot, because, man, the game is still gorgeous. It's 21 years old. It's still awesome looking.
Lovely. Okay, good stuff. Let's move on to our next news topic. Okay, and the next news story for this week. Well, it's a game that we've taunted and booed until our throats are sore, to paraphrase Homer Simpson, but it is Batman Arkham Knight on Switch, which has been patched. This kind of came out of the blue. We thought the game had been kind of written off a long, long time ago, but Oliver McKenzie, making a special guest appearance, is going to be talking us through this one.
Yeah. So obviously we had some substantial issues, I would say, with Arkham Knight on the original Switch version, which we took a look back at about 2 years ago now. And we also had some issues, although less profound ones, perhaps, with the Switch 2 running Arkham Knight back earlier this year, which still had, inherited all the same issues as we saw on Switch 1, but it ran at a faster clip, although with certain performance problems of its own, unique performance problems of its own. So the game was patched, and the update basically says that they've added additional stability improvements to Batman Arkham Knight on Nintendo Switch, added additional stability improvements to Batman Arkham Knight on Switch 2 through backwards compatibility. So I presume those two changes probably there to prevent crashes. I did note some crashing behavior on Switch 1 back when I tested it a couple of years ago. Perhaps that's, to deal with those kinds of problems. But then the third point here is the most interesting. It says additional performance and visual improvements when playing the game undocked on Nintendo Switch 2 through backwards compatibility. That's kind of the interesting note here. So I did test this patch on Switch 2. And so the key question for me with this patch is, does it actually do anything meaningful to the game's visuals? Because obviously the patch notes are rather vague. So in docked mode, at least, it doesn't really seem to do anything to game's visuals beyond what we saw with the Switch 2 version back in June. Because when we look at the Switch 2 version and compare it to the Switch 1 version, they're basically the same in terms of visual settings, which was also the case back in June. And so we can see that basically all of the same lighting downgrades, asset downgrades, pop-in issues with destruction not working properly, it's all the exact same on Switch 2, albeit running at a faster clip on the Switch 2 because it's obviously got a higher performance level. There are some performance issues that are unique to Switch 2, like how the vehicle animation here appears to stutter as we go through the city. Maybe there's some underlying animation stutter there on Switch 1 potentially that we're just seeing now on Switch 2 because it's operating at a much more consistent clip. Or maybe it's some unique behavior that's being exposed because the Switch 2 is much faster than Switch 1. And if we look at resolution across Switch 1 and Switch 2, we can see here, like in this diner scene, if we look up at these lights here in the top right-hand corner, we can see that Switch 1 and Switch 2 have very similar aliasing patterns, if not even identical aliasing patterns. And they both count to about 810p. So it's still the same resolution on Switch 2 as Switch 1, same visual settings, same everything, as far as we can see, at least in docked mode here. But if we look at the handheld mode, and this is more interesting. So the handheld mode actually now appears to have a much higher resolution than the Switch 1 version. Before, on the original Switch, it ran at 540p, and now it's running at about 720p. So the game looks much crisper, much sharper, more detailed, a much nicer visual experience, or at least substantially nicer visual experience on the Switch 2's display, just in terms of that visual clarity and the amount of detail that's being resolved in any given shot. And if we compare that against the Switch 2 version docked, it's not exactly the same, but it's pretty close in terms of the aliasing level, in terms of the overall detail level that's being resolved. It does look pretty similar, but just slightly softer, slightly chunkier, slightly less defined, but it is overall pretty similar to that Switch 2 docked experience. And that's kind of interesting because when I looked at the patch notes, I kind of just assumed they'd bring over the docked mode settings to the portable mode, and that doesn't actually seem to be the case. There is a small resolution divergence between docked mode and portable mode. I'm not exactly sure why that is. You'd think maybe it'd be simpler just to have one profile for both modes there, but at least that's the way that it is currently. So my conclusion here is that it's really important to just read the patch notes and determine what's going to happen based on those patch notes. That's usually a pretty reliable indicator of where the game will be. Because they said that portable mode would be improved on Switch 2, and that's basically all that's happened, and they didn't indicate some wider change, some Switch 2 edition kind of change, some broader improvement to asset quality, to lighting quality, to any of the various graphical effects that have been pruned out of the game. There's no indication that any of that has changed, and at least as far as I can see in my own playthrough on Switch 2 here, it does appear very similar to that Switch 1 code. Just enhanced a little bit in handheld mode, and that is appreciated, I suppose, but it's still kind of a broken port. It still has a ton of problems. It still looks pretty awful, I think, even on Switch 2 with its higher performance level. It'll take a lot to get this game to acceptable shape for a Switch 2 game. It's really just that handheld mode experience that's been improved. somewhat, but it's still not an experience that I would recommend on the whole.
I think they also did some updates to fix progression, as I understand.
Oh, really?
And that may have been the November update, but like there was a point where basically the game would get soft locked. You could not complete it. And apparently you can now do that, which is important.
Useful.
Indeed.
I mean, it's a continuingly sad story, isn't it? If sort of unrealized potential. I think on the Switch 1, the game was probably just too ambitious for that particular platform. But Switch 2, I mean, why not have like a sort of perfectly reproduced version of the PlayStation 4 edition with DLSS to solve the anti-aliasing issue? And that's actually been one of the interesting things about Switch 2 is that we've seen DLSS introduced into titles that haven't had DLSS before. And the improvement has been like quite remarkable. But looking at this, a lot of the issues that were inherent to the original version, I mean, there's no enhancement at all on Switch 2. The texture quality, for example, is just, lamentable. The aliasing issues are just highly problematic. Yeah, many thanks for actually going back and taking a look at it, though, Oliver, because, we sort of keep hoping for a miracle with these patches, but it doesn't really ever seem to happen, does it? Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, this game is cursed to not have very many good versions, apparently. The PC original, which we all know and love-hate, I guess, Rich especially, maybe, given his coverage over it over all these years. But here it feels like, I'd imagine that, like you were saying, that a PS4 quality should totally be within reach of the Switch 2, if not higher in a number of key areas. So it is a bit of a shame that this isn't actually a custom Switch 2 version from the ground up or anything like that. It's just going to be patched, maybe in the future.
Yeah, Oliver?
It's kind of a shame, too, because I kind of expected there to be more work going on with this game in general, because obviously in Jensen's prophecy, the infamous GeForce Now leak, we had some report of, I think, a Batman Arkham Knight RTX, something like this, along those lines, which seemed promising. That seemed like, maybe a next-gen PC version, maybe next-gen version for current-gen consoles now. Maybe even, something for Switch. Obviously, when I saw the Switch version, I assumed maybe this is piggybacking off of work to get Batman running on more modern platforms. Maybe there's some ongoing work on this title, but it turns out that's basically absent. And I totally agree. This is a game that actually seems like it would have been at least a good experience, could have been a good experience on Switch 2. But in general, this whole porting effort seemed very flawed in a number of ways. Like even the 360 era Batman titles, Batman Arkham City and the original Batman Arkham Asylum, those games had some issues on Switch 2 with notably low frame rates, certain issues here and there. So in general, this collection did not seem the highest quality, and it remains so, unfortunately.
Yeah, crazy stuff there. I mean, Alex, animation errors on a Switch game. That might be a first.
I'm really wondering why that is the case, because, on the PS4, it's just only a little bit problematic when you start driving the car, but animation error was never a thing there. And even on PC, that was never a thing. So that's custom work to make it worse, to say the least.
Oh dear. Well, we can only hope that moving into 2026, somebody realizes that there's actually a brilliant game here that should be modernized for modern systems. Crazy thought, though, right, John?
I mean, I would love it, but given what's happening with WB right now,
oh gosh,
I wouldn't hold my breath. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you just look at the business situation, I'm kind of fearful for all of these games and all of the WB studios at this point. Like clearly they're not making the money that whatever their potential new holders want. So I don't know, but I agree. I really think that this is a secretly amazing game that I think is very underrated. It was not as well received as the first two games from Rocksteady, but I actually think this is one of their bests. And the Batmobile stuff is super cool, and it's extremely cleverly integrated into the puzzle solving and design of the game, and it just looks cool. Like the Batmobile blasting around the city with all those effects and work. In play, it looks amazing, just not on Switch 2. But hey, at least the PC version is good now.
Yeah,
like, it plays awesome on PC. But so it's just interesting to see, like, and I know this is this is still backwards compatibility, but Oliver and I just did that FF7 video, right? And that's a UE4 game from the PS4 generation, and one of the better looking ones, and it's amazingly great on Switch too. But of course, this is an Unreal Engine 3 game cranked up to the 11, and holy moly, it's still real bad. But again, backwards compatibility only. But still, it's an interesting swing to go from one of those to the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the reputation of the game at launch, but I actually think over time it's kind of transformed into a sort of legacy game that people really enjoy and want to see again. Yeah. Any final thoughts there, Oliver?
No, it's just kind of a shame that I think this game will never, I mean, I hope it at some point it gets the port it deserves, because I think it's a terrific game, and it would look incredible with modern TAA integrated, DLSS integrated. Obviously, ray tracing would just be a dream in this game. Imagine this game with ray traced reflections. I mean, the game is constantly dripping wet, famously in Set at Night, so that would just look outstanding. But yeah, at the moment, the PC version is a good way to go. Last gen versions on backwards compatibility, I mean, PS4 is 1080p 30. I think Xbox One is 900p 30. Nothing to really write home about there. So I think this game deserves a second look for sure by a hopefully talented developer who can bring this game to modern platforms in a way that it's deserving of, I think.
That's a fascinating dream, Oliver. The idea of augmenting ray tracing features into an Unreal Engine 3 game.
Oh my god.
It'd be difficult. Well, but it was in Jensen's prophecy.
Has it been done?
Yes, they did it at some point, or started something. It was also with, didn't they have BioShock RTX, and Mirror's Edge RTX was also in Jensen's prophecy.
Oh,
yeah.
I hope it's true, but you know how things go.
Well, thanks for joining us on this one, Oliver, and Happy New Year, and thanks for everything you've done for us this year.
Likewise, thank you.
But before we continue, I have some breaking news, and special correspondent Thomas Morgan is here to talk about it.
Hey there, John. How's it going?
Pretty good, Tom. You're breaking into this week's DF Direct here because something happened.
Yeah. We published that Skyrim article. Switch 2 obviously had higher input lag than most of us were expecting. And we put out an article, I think it was the Wednesday or Thursday. And then obviously a new patch lands literally a day after the video goes out, as is always the way. And so we jumped right on that to see what changed.
And so as a refresher, the original version that was released that you looked at was capped at 30 frames per second on Switch 2, but it did target rather high resolutions. But the problem was it had exceptionally high input latency. Upwards of, you measured it when just looking at analog stick movement, which is the responsiveness of the analog stick for looking around. It was upwards of 237 milliseconds.
Yeah.
And 293 when looking at the jump button. But then also looking at these numbers, the Switch 1 version, it was actually a lot higher than I remembered. That came in at 151 milliseconds already. Versus say the PS5 version, which is all the way down at 60 milliseconds.
Yeah.
So if you were playing on Switch anyway, you were already going to have a bad time, but it seems like things got a lot worse. But now we have this patch here, and this is the one that says it fixes the input lag, but there is a caveat, isn't there?
Yes. So this is the patch ending 7.3 in the number there, version number. It's improved. So we'll start with the latency improvement. It is now on Switch 2 while doing an analog stick movement at 143 milliseconds, thereabouts, which is, oh my gosh, that's a huge improvement. It's about 94 or so compared to what we had before. I will say right away, you can ignore the numbers almost and just jump into it yourself, and you can judge and say, yeah, that feels a lot smoother. I noticed it right away. And so, it's not perfect. I think if you were to compare it to the PS5 version, just going by eye, you'd immediately notice. But okay, we're now back sort of to ballpark Switch 1 levels, which, despite the high latency readings we have, a lot of people didn't seem to really notice at the time. And, if it's not a problem for people, then let's carry on with our lives and enjoy the game, right? But so this is, I think, a good forward step, and it bears out in those analog stick movements. Jump button as well. I did. It's the patched Switch 2 release comes in at 224 milliseconds, which is less improved compared to what we had before, but I imagine it's all the same, really. It's just some margin of error stuff going on there. So it's an improvement all round on this new patch, right in time for Christmas. So we're ready, it's good news on the surface. It's a hotfix, and they've jumped in very quickly to address what was very widespread concerns on forums. So good stuff there.
For good reason.
Yeah. So let's dig into the downside, which is the frame rate cap at 30 has been removed. This allows the game to run completely unlocked to 60 FPS, which on the surface sounds like good news, right? But it really depends on whether it can get close to 60. And the bottom line is it doesn't change any visual settings. So what you end up with is it's running at 4K DLSS, running from a native 1440p with all the same settings it was running at before. And the fact it's running unlocked just shows you the true raw naked frames, that it would have been running at behind that 30 FPS cap, which is to say 30 to 35 while roaming the open world. It doesn't seem to ever go under 30, which is good, but it's sort of like it just sort of tops out at 35. And if you really were to, push it and look at the sky, you'd get 45 FPS. If you go into a dungeon, it's maybe 45 to 50. And if you look at the sky or just go face the eyeball to a wall, you're getting 60 FPS there. So, there is scope. It would have been nice to, it just seems like a very strange, quick choice to solve the issue.
So it seems, the thing is it's clearly not a simple fix, but their solution here was simply to remove that cap. So that implies that the cap itself, the VSync cap they were using, added a tremendous amount of input lag, which is not good. But there should be a way to cap it at 30 without incurring a gigantic penalty in terms of input latency. So that's something they need to work on. What I would like to see the most actually is like a sort of a mix, if you will, where you would have, say, a quality mode that targets 30 with a 30 FPS cap fixed if possible, followed by a performance mode that is actually more aggressive with the settings, which presumably, 1440p native res with DLSS up to 4K, we know that that's not that cheap. On top of everything else. So I feel like there might be some headroom to make adjustments to actually get a higher frame rate here, because right now you just left with something that feels not great. It's just way too unstable and unpleasant to control.
Yeah. I don't think it really helps to run it in portable mode either. It's just not high enough in, maybe a 40 FPS capped mode in portable would have been the best way there, but
they'd have to be running it. They don't run this in 120 FPS mode, I assume, right?
Exactly.
So the VRR range is super limited and basically useless.
Exactly. So even there, it's not exactly helpful. But you're absolutely right. A performance mode that's actually tailored would have been perfect. Think about if they didn't have all the bolt-on visual upgrades that we covered in the original video, if the SSR was removed, say, if the ambient occlusion was dialed back and all the other settings that they've added to the Switch 2 release were dialed back to the Switch 1 version, surely 60 FPS is on the table then. Run it at 1080p or even 720p DLSS and, there you go. So it's kind of, this is, the definition of a hotfix, something that Bethesda has swooped in with before Christmas to allay concerns that they've seen on forums, and they were legitimate concerns. I think the input latency was just, it's like you said in your video, the direct with Oliver, that it was near connect levels of lag or above connect levels of lag. And for me, my comparison point was it's above cloud streaming. Any cloud streaming service I've ever tested, it's been higher. This is higher than that. So yeah, it really needed to be addressed, but the consequence of having gameplay run at 30 to 35 FPS just feels, it doesn't feel great. It's just such a compromise.
Oh, what a shame. So it's still not a great version of the game at this point, but at least it's a little more playable, even if it visually now looks kind of worse due to the unstable frame rate. But man, tricky situation. Thankfully, if you really want to play Skyrim, it seems that there's plenty of other options out there for you right now. Heck, I almost would have just been happier if they just allowed the Switch 1 version to just run at full frame rate or something. But
Exactly, yeah.
But I guess that's going to do it for this segment, Tom. So thanks for coming on at short notice here.
No worries. Good luck with the rest of the DF Direct.
Let's get back to it. Rich, back to you.
Okay, so recently I took delivery of the GPD Win 5, which is one of the first handhelds to feature the Strix Halo APU in a tiny, tiny form factor. It's really, really quite impressive. And we're going to be talking about that a bit in our best hardware of 2025. But the concept of this Strix Halo APU, SoC over 400 square millimeters inside, living within a handheld is kind of crazy on its own. But Ayaneo have gone several steps further with what Strix Halo is going to represent for them in their handheld. I'm assuming this is going to be a pretty monstrous beast. It's got a 9-inch OLED display. It's got a 2400 by 1504, 165 hertz high refresh rate display.
Good Lord, dude.
Yep. A floating 8-way D-pad and dual touchpads, dual mode trigger locks and dual rear buttons, powered by AMD Ryzen AI Max Plus 395. So they're going for it. They're just basically putting anything that they can within a handheld that's at the extremes. And, it looks quite remarkable.
Somebody's suggesting the battery is such that it won't be able to take it onto airplanes.
Correct. Yes, that is correct. That basically you won't find any laptops with a battery that's over 100 watt hours.
Oh, this is 115 watt hour.
Yeah, they've just added 15 watt hours, because why not?
Sure, why not?
If the TSA steal your gaming handheld on a flight, there's no fault but your own.
Oh my goodness.
But it's interesting that you point that out, John, because also it's supporting the full 120 watts that Strix Halo is capable of.
Whoa.
That will take you beyond, based on my tests with a mini PC, that will take you beyond PlayStation 5 performance in games like Alan Wake 2 and stuff like that. And the GPD Win 5 tops out at 75 watts. Which in my test is slightly below PlayStation 5, but whatever, it's still like astonishing. So yes, I mean, I just can't quite believe that they're doing all of this stuff. It's just kind of nuts.
I mean, I like Ayaneo for this reason, because their product lineup is just crazy. They make so many weird random things to suit like whatever you might need, and they often look really cool. And I think it's neat to see one that's just like throwing everything they can at this thing. Like, all right, it's unleashed. Have fun, guys. And I just wonder when we're getting up to like 10, 11, 12, beyond 12-inch screens on these things. Like, how big is it going to go?
Well, you've got plenty of 13-inch displays to choose from.
True.
And I guess the iPad Pro size device.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, like
I don't know how
bolt controllers onto the side of an iPad Pro.
I'm interested in this 1100 nits peak brightness screen. Do you just like blind yourself when you turn this on or something? Like that's brighter than a lot of like 2nd gen or 3rd gen OLEDs, 4th gen OLEDs even, peak brightness. Like, that is nuts in the palm of your hand.
I mean, the Shogun 7 that I use for capturing supports 3000 nits.
Oh my gosh.
Which it is actually, if you like crank up that brightness, it's painful to look at, and the unit gets so hot you can barely touch it.
Yeah, my goodness.
I actually need to make a quick correction here, because it's actually the 1X player 1X Fly Apex, which is another extreme Strix
Hold on,
handheld.
Rich. 1X player 1X Fly Apex? That's what they called it?
Mm-hmm. Apparently, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that is the one that supports up to 120 watts. And it's the Ayaneo Next 2 here goes up to 85 watts. So that still gives you like PlayStation 5 level performance there. The 1X Player 1X Fly Apex has an 8-inch 16 by 10 120 hertz VRR native screen, 500 nits, however. So it's a choice basically between OLED and no VRR, and it seems VRR, but at much lower peak brightness. Yeah, I'm just loving this. I think the problem is for these Chinese handheld creators is that once Asus, Lenovo, etc., entered the market with their own handhelds, which were kind of like, pretty much as performant as you can get, they had to go somewhere else, right? They had to up the ante still further, provide a device that you can't buy from Best Buy or whatever. And Strix Halo comes along and it's suddenly, whoa, party time here.
Party time.
And the concept of this gigantic APU sitting within a handheld at all. And I've got to say, although the GPD Win 5 has an external battery, this thing is like the actual handheld part of it is smaller than a Steam Deck. It's really quite astonishing.
Wow.
And the GPD Win 5, I mean, again, I'm going to talk about it in the best hardware, but it does actually produce, I'm playing Alan Wake 2 on it. It looks like the performance mode from the PlayStation 5 version because it's the same settings. It's running at pretty much the same level of performance. It's got a VRR screen. You just have to scale the resolution down to the 1080p screen, but it still looks great because I think the GPD Win 5's only got quote unquote only got a 7-inch screen.
Remind me, Rich, what's the consumption on the PS5? It's like 200 to 300 watts usually, or something like that.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
So
it's basically about 200 watts with a game running flat out.
So that's a really nice efficiency gain, and it's really amazing that we're seeing that sort of performance in a handheld device. Even if the handheld device is gigantic, it's still it's significantly smaller than the PS5.
Oh yeah,
which is a monster. So I mean, this is super cool stuff, I must say.
So yeah, the interesting thing is that when you've got a device that is running, that's when you've got an APU so big and you cap it to 30 watts, which is the same as ROG Ally X, and then you scale down the resolution of the game for a 1080p screen, you get kind of PS5 level performance in terms of frame rate. But if you are running quote unquote docked and you just ramp the wattage up to 70, 80 watts, then you're within striking distance of producing PlayStation 5 results at the same resolution as the PlayStation 5. So the concept that a handheld is doing this is quite phenomenal. And I just like the idea that, Ayaneo, 1X Player and GPD are all producing these devices. They are going to be insanely expensive. There is, but ultimately, if you want that portable PlayStation experience years before Sony deliver it, well, here it is. It's just kind of nuts, really. Alex,
I lament it though, but RDNA 3.5, that's the only thing I really wish was different about this. And I don't think there can be anything done with it because for some reason, AMD was really reluctant to put RDNA 4 into anything other than desktop GPUs. At this point in time. And that is a shame because this is a very scalable power level. It's very good power level. You're saying like PS5, but it doesn't scale nearly as well into the future as a result of RDNA 4. I mean, the people who are buying this are probably people who buy crazy stuff like every few years. So they don't care probably that much.
Like Oliver?
I mean, Oliver's like, I just picked up a new MacBook something. I was like, what the hell? But no, continuing with the story is that, RDNA 4 would at least, because obviously we just had Redstone launching, there is no on the horizon support for FSR4 or FSR features, future FSR features on anything but RDNA 4 Plus, presumably.
Right.
And that official, especially on a Windows machine, having that officially in a game instead of having to hook an optiscaler, with a mouse and keyboard or whatever every single time, having a non cumbersome way to get really great image quality. Smaller screens do help things a lot to just for making things more forgiving, of course. But the screen size keeps increasing, so it's going to get worse and worse with every screen size increase. So that's the way it is.
I think there are fundamental questions as to why AMD didn't roll out RDNA 4 for its desktop APUs, and it's, obviously what becomes handheld APUs. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that makes me wonder about these devices. And I can only think they didn't do it for the same reason they probably didn't do it RDNA 1, which is to say that the reason that didn't happen, I guess, is that RDNA 2 was just so much better. And it may well be the case with RDNA 5 versus RDNA 4, based on the fact that, this seems to be the generational leap that is enough to make Sony potentially jump on board with its own handheld and to base its next generation console on. So that may well be the case here. So yeah, this could be an interesting in-betweener device, Strix Halo, but it still doesn't have, you're quite right. I mean, the fact that it doesn't have the machine learning features or the ray tracing prowess of RDNA 4 is a bit problematic, right? And the fact that it seems that AMD doesn't want to do the Int 8 version of FSR4, again, that's not great. I don't know, but yes, in all other ways, this device is just kind of crazy, and I do wonder the extent to which RDNA 5 efficiency could actually bring that, bring that level of performance without a 400 square millimeter APU, which is kind of crazy. But I'd look forward to seeing more people doing more crazy things with Strix Halo. And surely there must be a next generation version of Strix Halo based on RDNA 5 coming at some point in the dim and distant future. But with that, let us move on. Okay, so Bungie has broken cover with a VIDOC, a quote-unquote VIDOC, which I understand is short for video documentary, about Marathon. And it's a game that's had a fairly troubled development period, seemingly. It was delayed. It is coming. It's going to cost $40. John, I'm curious what you make about this new disclosure.
So, as you noted, this game has been through a lot. Obviously, there was the initial announcement period. People were disappointed to find out what type of game it is, an extraction shooter, versus what the original Marathon was. Then it was, obviously, there was that situation with the playtests not shaping up great. It's too easy, not that interesting initially. And then the art thing, where it found out that, hey, they actually kind of ripped off an artist for some of the iconic design stuff that was going on in the game. But since then, they've made that situation right. They've made the artist whole. I think it was very, very cool. Everyone's happy there. They've massively retooled the game. People have been playing this. And they just recently represented everything in this VDoc or whatever you want to call it, which is a word they've used for a long time. A portmanteau, I guess, of a video documentary, as you noted. But the feedback both from players that have been testing it again, as well as like what you can kind of gather from this video doc, is that they really have done some major work to make this game interesting again. And I hope they can pull it off, because this did feel like this was going to be the next Concord, if you will. Maybe not that bad, but like it was not going in the right direction. Now, however, I like what I'm seeing here. First of all, I'm attracted to this idea of it being a very difficult, hostile world. Like the whole thing about these types of shooters, I conceptually like this, playing as a team going into this sort of game. But it needs to be brutal. And that's one of the reasons why I've always enjoyed Hunt from Crytek, is that it is actually quite a challenging game. And it doesn't pull any punches, I think. And it seems like that's what they're doing here. I also think they've done a nice job evolving the visual design. The visuals shown in this video look, I think, really good. It still seems to be Bungie's, I think it's Tiger engine, if I recall. But this is like their internal engine. They didn't switch to Unreal or anything like that, as far as I can tell. And the visual design remains quite strong, stronger actually than when it was shown before, where it was a little bit weak. Like there's some truly beautiful stuff in this video, I think, like just the use of color, like the lighting, the shading, and just like the general like designs. It still feels very fresh. And this is something Bungie's always been really, really good with. Like this is what they do. So I'm really happy to see that all kind of come together. And just everything about this actually makes me interested. And I'm not somebody that's typically into multiplayer games, but take, for instance, Destiny, right? I don't really like games as a service, but I liked Destiny a lot. I thought Destiny was awesome. It's one of the only ones that I've ever truly enjoyed. A lot of that comes down to the core gameplay mechanics, the way it feels to play it, the way it feels to control it. They're really, really good with that. Like just the weapon positioning, the way the weapons animate and move, the way enemies react to hits and fire. Everything about the act of just shooting at foes feels good. And this is something in my 360 video I talked about recently when I went back to Call of Duty 2. Very old game now, right? But the original Call of Duty 2, I remember, I realized I don't like it anymore. I think it sucks.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes down to the core mechanics just aren't enjoyable to wield. Shooting enemies feels bad. You're shooting tiny little targets at a distance. They don't react in interesting ways. Nothing about it controls well. Whereas you take like Halo 1 or Halo 2 from that same era, you drop the Master Chief in like a box room with a bunch of enemies, and just dispatching his enemies is fun. That's what Bungie does. And I think that's what I'm hoping for here as well. So if they can pull all of this off, deliver that quality Bungie gunplay, make this world compelling, because it does look compelling. And if a world isn't compelling, you're not going to want to jump into this kind of game in the first place. Like, I'm actually interested in giving it a shot. And I really hope that this becomes a good story for them as opposed to like a failure, because the direction they were moving, there was a lot of concern that we were looking at the end of Bungie, right? Like Destiny's fizzling out. Marathon seemed to be a bust. It was not good, but it really seems like they have, in earnest, put a lot of time and effort into righting this ship. So I hope they pull it off.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Alex?
Well, I'm not nearly as positive as John, mainly because I just play a lot of these. Well, I haven't played a lot of them because I don't like them. But a lot of the extraction shooters,
I don't normally like them too either, Alex. That's what I was saying.
Yeah. But like, I think my problem with the extraction shooters is that they kind of follow similar molds. And I always thought Bungie historically didn't always, I mean, they had some moments where they did try and ape other franchises' gameplay mechanics and stuff. But like, I always just think of the fact that they were like one of the few studios that kept hip shooting a viable gameplay mechanic in first-person shooters for a lot longer than everyone else. Everyone just went to the left trigger Call of Duty, everyone uses aim down sight kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of switched that up when like around Destiny 2 time, where it's more about ADS now. But I always liked the fact that they were kind of more old school in their design. And that's probably the one thing that I don't see here. It is very modern, and maybe that's what people like these days. But I always really liked Bungie's more old school gameplay mechanics in terms of not requiring ADS and no slides and, all these other things that you kind of saw. I really did like run and gun. But this footage is different. Like I just recently played, I was about to call it Ark Survival Evolved, but it's called, what's the
it's called Ark Raiders, Alex.
Ark Raiders.
I'm sorry, but that is another game that has like a leaning.
By all means, play Ark Survival Evolved.
Another game that is leaning on 70s Bauhaus almost in styled art design, kind of like this is in some ways. Obviously this one goes for more cartoony though, as a part of that. But like hostile world, you go outside, you PvE, you PvP. It just doesn't appeal to me. It's not a game at all for me, in terms of design. But so I think if you do like these games, probably if you liked Ark Raiders or whatnot, this could be appealing to you. Although I do look at the stats and I get a little worried because I just, my eyes blur over at this point when I look at stats. But the one thing, it's got an SSR that's visible in the trailer. So Bungie hasn't evolved on that front, but maybe we'll see it when it comes to the final product. Maybe there's actually differences between versions there. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, what can I say? Just going back to your Call of Duty comments there, John, because you were, I'd say it was a social media pile-on when you announced that you didn't like Call of Duty 2 anymore. Everyone thought that you'd gone mad.
That was pretty funny. And
that's
To be fair, the PC version is at least more enjoyable, but because you have a mouse control, and the problem with this game is they focus on small targets at a distance. Like, the difference between Halo and Call of Duty in single player anyway, and I guess multiplayer as well, is that in Halo, you're a multi-range fighting machine. You're getting up close and you're fighting at a distance, where Call of Duty is primarily like a distance game. And players go down faster, and everything's about like long distance shots. And the 360 version of Call of Duty 2, as I found out, it's not actually good. Like, it runs pretty badly, a lot worse than my memory suggested. It's always dropping frames. Like, as soon as the combat starts, boom, 30 FPS. And it just, they didn't tune the controller right. It doesn't feel great. I did not have fun at all playing it, like, even a little bit. I think it's a much worse game than all the contemporary shooters of that era. Like, you look at, between the Halo games at the time, Half-Life 2, Doom 3, Fear even. And I don't love Fear, but I still think Fear plays better than Call of Duty 2. All that's Quake 4 I talked about. I think Quake 4 is a much better game all around. So
interesting.
I know people, but before you take issue with it, though, I seriously recommend load it up again. In my mind, in my head canon, Call of Duty 2 was great. And then I had to play through it, and I realized I don't actually like this. I found it very boring, especially like so the main problem, the game gunplay, not fun on the 360 anyway. But then the missions are usually just like, follow the scripted scene. Now stand here and fight waves of boring enemies for a long time. Now go to next scripted scene. And that's pretty much all you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of them just are very repeating. Like John,
very repetitive. I
sent John some of my footage that I played the game for 2.5 hours because I was trying to get to a certain point, and I just said, F this game sucks.
So so you thought that too, Alex?
Yeah. I got to the mission where you're playing as, like the SAS or whatever in the desert of North Africa, and they're like, defend this position, and you just are like constantly doing the same thing. You man a machine gun, and then you use binoculars to call in artillery strikes that are very late, by the way, always, every time, to much to your annoyance. And it just, like the guys you're shooting at, it's pretty easy to hit them on PC, like you said, with a mouse. But for me, just like the mission design is just trash. It's really trashy mission design. So if you just play other shooters from the era that allow you more leeway and how you actually have actions, they're much more fun. So that game doesn't have it.
I'm glad you agree with me on that, Alex. And I really think anybody that takes issue with it really should go give it a shot again, because it's I will say that they improved a lot of things with Call of Duty going forward. You can see why it was Call of Duty 4 where it really broke out. I have my issues with that game as well, but it instantly just feels much better.
Well, going back to your comments on how repetitive and boring Call of Duty is, I've just got 2 words for you: historical accuracy.
Yeah, that's right. War isn't very fun.
Yeah, I know.
It's not very fun. It's very repetitive. You will have delays on your airstrikes. Sorry, Alex. On your artillery strikes.
Yeah, I had my grandfather review his time in World War II all those years ago, and he gave it a pretty low score. He said it was pretty boring. Really? And, too stressful at other times. So
crazy stuff. Well, it looks as though Marathon is going to be arriving March 2026. So maybe we should all play it together and do some extracting and see whether we like it or not.
I'm in 100%. It's going to be me and Oliver on the team. And Rich, you can join in. Alex, I don't think you have too much interest in that.
Not as much enthusiasm.
Not interested, Alex. Anyway, let's move on to our next news topic. So a couple of years ago, a certain game came out from Ubisoft Massive called Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, and we instantly lauded it as, I think it got Graphics of the Year.
Wow.
For that particular year. astonishing looking game. Still looks brilliant today. And some might say that it actually looks even better because a new patch has arrived that updates the game. I think there's a third person mode that's now available. But Alex, you've been looking at some more technological changes that have happened, and you're here to report.
Yeah, this is funny because I looked at the patch notes when this came out, and they said they updated to DLSS 4 in the patch notes. That was it. And I thought like, oh, they switched over to transformer model. I didn't realize that meant they added in frame gen, multi-frame gen, and DLSS ray reconstruction. That's quite a big update that I think just saying you support DLSS 4 now doesn't really communicate in a little press brief. So that excited me. My excitement was dampened heavily though when I loaded it up. And you'll just see I'll just send this footage to Oliver. I didn't send it to you guys, but man, it runs like crap when I initially loaded up on an RTX 5080.
Oh no.
Which was in the PC. And yeah, it just like, I would look at water, it would be at 20 FPS. I'd look at things that weren't water, it'd be at 60 FPS. 4K DLSS performance mode. It just didn't have any consistent performance that really made sense. And I knew it probably wasn't the way it was supposed to be because we've seen this engine running ray reconstruction before in Star Wars Outlaws, and I presumed something wasn't right. Lo and behold, yesterday evening after making a bunch of recordings, I was notified of a patch, and that patch definitely fixed things up. It wasn't just broken on that level, but like these left and right here, you can see on the left-hand side is the launch patch of this update of the game with Fire and Ash DLC, etc. And it's like 20 FPS while I'm looking at the water here on the RTX 5080. On the right-hand side, it's running at a full 60. This is using the unobtainium settings. And you'll also notice that the water on the left is flickering heavily, even at that low frame rate.
Yeah, I see.
That's because anything below the water level, there's like lighting below water. And for some reason, the denoiser wouldn't work with that. It would just flicker crazy. That's all gone now. And now I can actually show some other footage of what it really brings to the table. So here I'm showing the game at high settings quite purposefully because ray reconstruction is good at taking low resolution inputs and making them look more high res. And here, like right when you get out that like little great opening to the Pandora for the first time, left-hand side, the original denoiser, right-hand side, ray reconstruction, you can see that the water on the ground has a whole lot less flickering on it, and it's a lot more stable. And you can see the coherent detail of the wind pushing its surface a lot better rather than just kind of being ghosty and noisy. And that's probably the biggest deal with this is just noise suppression and increasing specular reflections on water to look a lot better. Like here up close, you can see that on the left, it's really ghosty and still noisy, and it almost looks low frame rate because the ghosting happening within itself, that's actually 60 FPS. But on the right-hand side, you can actually see like, oh, the water surface has ripples in it from the wind across its surface. And also the reflections you see don't look like weirdly dull and ghosty. They just look nice and crisp. I showed a couple other scenes of that I captured. Another thing that it does is really good noise suppression for like specular lighting when it's raining, or not when it's raining, just in general, because here it wasn't actually raining. But when the lower settings are on high, like we see here on the left, underneath these plants, it's just really flickery. And ray reconstruction gets rid of that. But I would say there's definitely the image is less crisp than it is before. It is a bit of a softer image. I think it's preferable to a lot of noise, but that may be subjective there. Another thing you'll notice is that I did back and forth here because it's hard to show in a side-by-side, but ray reconstruction for diffuse lighting typically just really tightens up like contact shadows and local lighting a lot better. So if you do that left, back and forth here, you'll see that like underneath things, they're much more attached to the ground than they were previously. So it does a really good job at that. There weren't any of the bugs that I experienced pre this patch that I just tested out, except for one, not maybe an oversight or just something that doesn't work with ray reconstruction at the moment, or maybe it won't work. I don't know. We'll figure out if they patch it. But if you look at a surface, there's a really cool raindrop effect, rain streaks effect in the rainy moments in the game on the left there. And ray reconstruction just doesn't seem to know it exists and just paints over it with It looks like it's not even raining anymore on the surface. Probably not intended. Maybe it is intended. We'll see. But overall, performance was the exact same deficit you saw in Star Wars Outlaws, so nothing really to talk about there. But it does increase the game's fidelity by quite a bit in those areas where it was struggling the most at lower settings, I would say. If you pump this game up to unobtainium, I think the differences will be more minor in scenes because the resolution is so much higher internally for the ray tracing, but you'll still see like less ghosting and whatnot. So that's a positive. But in general, very happy to see this game being patched. I hope they do look at that little rain thing that I talked about and maybe some other bugs that I just didn't find. Perhaps other users found bugs that I haven't found. Yeah, really awesome. Back at launch, I was really disappointed that the game didn't support frame gen on NVIDIA and instead only offered like, at the time, FSR 3 frame gen. And, it's honestly just wasn't good at that period in time. And you kind of had like to choose between higher frame rates with crappier frame gen, or it's nice to see both things supported now, basically, as well as XeSS.
Let's talk about the rain for a minute, Alex. I just want to make sure there was actually rain elsewhere. You could say, there was actually a rain effect there outside. Yeah,
there is.
Okay, so that sort of rules out my thing, which is like maybe that Ray Reconstruction, extra patch note here, improved weather. But that's not the case.
No, this is just turning it on and off. You can see it if you look at any surface that during rain, like the raindrops still show in the air, but it's just this rain effect, the surface effect that mainly disappears. I don't know. You can feed Ray Reconstruction a whole bunch of different stuff, and maybe if it's not fed certain textures that it should have, it will just never even appreciate them in general. But usually it catches normal detail really well, so it is a little surprising to see it not there, but who knows. I would like to see that fixed if possible.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, I mean, obviously whenever there's a new Avatar movie coming out, there's a great excuse for or a reason rather for Ubisoft to go back and improve the game. Why not? The game could get a new lease of life from that, and I think the more people playing this fantastic experience, the better. But what do you think, John?
This looks awesome. I'm looking at the video Alex uploaded.
Yeah.
Like, let me just tell you, while you were talking, Alex, I actually loaded up the Ubi launcher and just reinstalled the game. That's how
that's a good advertisement.
That's what it did. I'm like, oh, this looks awesome. Because so a couple things. First of all, Ray Reconstruction, big difference here I'm seeing. Secondly, just the addition of actual like NVIDIA's frame generation. Like this game shipped with the AMD variant of frame generation, and I always found it sucked. And it's like it always basically, if you were between refresh rate like intervals, it would show judder in a pretty bad way. I never liked the way FSR frame gen looks to my eyes, and that does not happen with NVIDIA Ray Reconstruction. So just adding that right there means I can use it to get higher frame rates. And I know, I mean, talking about frame generation, it always seems to make people annoyed, but like, I love it. I really think it does, like perceptually, it just looks like a higher frame rate. It just feels better. And so whenever there's an option, I like to use it on these higher end games because it does let you push up the visuals really far and still get like what feels like 165 FPS in my case. Right. And I love that. So I'm very curious to try this out because I was not able to play this with any sort of frame generation before. And things like the water and various other effects, they did like it didn't detract too much from the overall presentation, but like you notice it, right? You're just running around the world. There's a ton of this stuff around everywhere. And you just notice all those little inconsistencies over time. And I'm just eager to see it running like basically cleaned up. It was the same with Cyberpunk, where that's been through a lot of iterations over the years, you know, from launch. And then actually when the first round of Ray Reconstruction hit, I actually thought it was pretty horrible looking. Like I liked what it was doing conceptually, but the whole image had this like AI upscaled smeared look to it that I didn't love. And then proper DLSS 4 and everything basically fixed all of that. And it looks remarkable now. So image quality upgrades are cool and they can make a big difference. So I'm curious to see how this holds up.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
I'm excited. Also, I like to see that this engine has it more. Has ray reconstruction and DLSS FG integrated in it, because they're going to be pushing probably in the future. I don't know if they'll work on another Star Wars Outlaws, but I imagine they're going to work on the next, Snowy New York game. Everyone.
The Division.
The Division.
Yeah, their prior game. Which just got updated for PS5, didn't it? It was 60 FPS.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
I'm just imagining that world and art with their really new ray tracing tech. Because The Division was always a really good looking game. Maybe in some ways it wasn't as good looking as the initial trailer. That's happened. But imagine that world with this ray tracing, like with specular reflections everywhere. And
Tom Clancy's. Whoa. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, it is a Tom Clancy game.
Yes, yeah.
No. It's a Tom Clancy's game.
Yeah.
Tom Clancy's game.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that I would love to see. I just like seeing this engine because it's one of my favorite non-Unreal Engine engines. It's really performant and it looks good. Just imagine this though. They didn't add it because it probably is crazy work, but they could have added in technically, RTX DI. Like you'd have ray trace shadows everywhere too. Oh my God, that'd be amazing. But I digress. I'm just very happy to see Avatar look even better over time.
Yeah, I also want to see Avatar on a Switch 2, just to see how they would pull it off. Because it's one of the first games, along with Alan Wake 2, I go to test a new handheld because it just punishes them hard. And then you look at Outlaw. It makes Outlaws on Switch 2 even more remarkable, in my opinion. But the challenge with Avatar is even more profound just because of all of that micro detail. But anyway, John.
Oh, I was just thinking, since Avatar won Graphics of the year it came out, it just got me thinking about Graphics of the Year again. And totally as a side tangent, one game that seemingly slipped through the cracks this year that a lot of people mentioned was the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. And I'm curious, I was curious about your thoughts on that just from a visual perspective, because it's also sort of this open world thing. And I went and looked at, I've never played it until now. And I went and looked at it and I was like, oh, this actually looks like really, really great. And did we just forget about it, or do you not feel it makes the list? Or like,
I was like halfway between it. Like I was gonna suggest it in the honorable mentions, but since we kind of kept that up for Switch stuff, I was
I see.
Yeah. But the reason why is like I played it, but I don't think it advanced super hardcore over its predecessor.
I see.
Its predecessor was very good looking.
It was
for the time when it came out. But I think the thing that I really want to talk about it in the context of it, this is obviously not about Avatar, but I thought it was just a very performant port for how it looked. There were many better looking games this year than it, I thought, but I thought it was very performant for how it looked. And that is maybe a different discussion. Maybe that's a best ports video, best PC versions video, which may come out at some point this year. So everyone getting upset with me, I thought it was just a very great performing port, great performing PC version. But Svogi is great looking, but as soon as you get out of a forest, it is not as good looking.
Yeah, and, that's what I found visually interesting. It's like the forests and natural areas in this game do seem to look stunning, but then the non-natural areas are perhaps less impressive. Yeah.
And, other things like, the water is kind of crappy looking these days, oh
no.
It's a great looking game. I'm very happy we have games that take place in historical settings that don't have magic in them. But, I don't, just look at it in comparison to go to a forest scene in its original and go to a forest scene in the successor title. And you'll see that there actually isn't such huge advancement, I would say, between them. And that game came out so long ago that I was just like, I mean, come on. I don't know. But it could have easily been an honorable mention, like I said. That's fine.
Interestingly, when you look at footage of him riding the horse, though, it made me think of Red Dead Redemption 2, actually, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of
looks like that.
It's very reminiscent of that. I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up because
it's good.
It got my interest in that because I had completely forgotten that this game even existed. But a lot of people said, dude, you've got to check it out. And I put it on my list, and looking at footage of it, it does look really good, I have to say. So
Yeah.
It's also a game that has real dark nights. That's another thing we talked about during,
right.
during our footage. Just one last little soliloquy. When I was playing Avatar to do this footage, I wasn't paying attention, and I kept trying to bring up my nanosuit modes to run faster. That tells you how broken my brain is. But also, it looks like Crisis.
You just live in Crisis world.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay.
It's breaking PCs and melting your brain.
What I like to see. Okay, let's move on to our next news topic. Okay, well, so we had to cover this one quickly. Blurbusters has released its TestUFO 3.0. And John, you're here to talk us about it because this is a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah, so for those that don't know, TestUFO is the creation of Mark, the chief blurbuster. He's been working on this for so many years and has continued to evolve and adding tests where necessary. And Mark also does contract work with big companies on various things. And the whole point of this is essentially a test suite used to dial in motion clarity. This is an often overlooked aspect of flat panel displays, something that has plagued them for now decades. And Blurbusters is focused on finding ways to scientifically prove this stuff out and make it better, which is extremely important, I think. So TestUFO 3 is essentially, you've probably seen the UFO. I mean, you guys know it's that cute little like pixel art UFO man that scrolls really fast to in one direction, and you can track, motion blur and all that. TestUFO 3.0 basically adds a lot of new tests and upgrades, things about the back end that runs it. So, it's faster, it loads quicker. One of the coolest things I really like is that it actually does proper native one-to-one pixel overriding. So like, say you're in a browser, you've got either your windows scaling up or you're like zooming in with your browser. It keeps the artwork at one-to-one scale no matter what you do, even if you're like doing it in real time, changing the scale. So it doesn't mess with things. So the test always looks correct. But it also has integer scaling options if you want, and better sync detection. And it works with things like HDR and wide color gamut. WebGL with some pixel shader demos are included, including, really robust, the CRT electron beam simulator is in there. He's also updated to make sure that it supports 1,000+ hertz displays, with special instructions for that, because 1,000 hertz is kind of like and I think Mark himself is the one that stated this, that reaching 1,000 hertz is where things like click over to be essentially like non-perceptible motion blur. You get your motion resolution down to where it should be. He's also improved various other demos that were already there. And it's basically just a really good way for sites reviewing this stuff to test the monitors. It's good for engineers working on displays, and it's good just for the end user to sort of see how their own displays and various other displays stack up. I use this all the time to sort of understand like the way things work on this. You know what I mean? It's like, how does my display handle this sort of thing, right? So, and it's really fun to see what it does. So I do recommend checking that out if you can. I especially like the MPRT tests, which is to test the moving picture response time. And it really revealed some interesting things, like how the LG CX that I still have downstairs with its 120 hertz black frame insertion is actually not that far off from like a native 480 hertz OLED without black frame insertion. So it basically allows you to sort of benchmark displays. And now I'm curious. I want to see if I can get this running on the Switch 2 through some sort of backdoor web browser-y access, because I think that I want to see what the MPRT is on the Switch 2 screen. Although, speaking as a quick tangent, let me mention this. A patron of ours that I talk to regularly, who we met back in London, who goes by the nickname Draga.
He's great. He's such a cool guy.
He recently stopped by a Nintendo shop when he was over in Japan that was showcasing Switch 2, and it's a brand new shop. So the demo units were also new. And he was comparing the screens in the demo kiosk to his own personal Switch 2 and noticed he perceived a noticeable difference in motion clarity on the new unit, which now has us wondering, did Nintendo make a hardware or software adjustment to the screen? So this is just the very first report I've seen of this. It's something that we want to investigate, but if Nintendo has indeed made changes to the screen, this could be very, very good news. Nice. Because right now, as was tested back around launch, the screen is very, very slow. It's known. I think actually Monitors Unboxed did probably the best test on this, where they actually leveraged their tools, their robust set of tools, to really show that, the screen is like actually even possibly twice as slow as the original Switch, but only like 50% better than the PSP 1000 or something. Like it's very, very slow out of the box. So, but it seems like it could be tweakable with overdrive or something, as we suggested, and maybe Nintendo has done that. So watch out for more potential tests if we can get to the bottom of that. But there is a little bit of hope on the horizon. But stuff like the TestUFO is the way that you can find this stuff out.
Nice.
So, right.
Excellent. Okay, so good stuff. Alex, any thoughts?
Yes. When I got this really awesome 4K dual mode 240 480 monitor, the first thing I did was test UFO. Yeah, because I had never seen 480 hertz live, and it actually started. It broke the blood-brain barrier. It really was awesome to see 480 on an OLED. Like John said, like you say, BFI is probably even better. I can't even imagine BFI 480 if what that even looks like, if that's possible. But like it was really cool to see. TestUFO 3.0, I have also tried it out. I really liked all the new tests. And the one test that I thought was missing, that I don't think they can really bridge the gap there just yet, is probably because it uses WebGL, is that it would be amazing to have a test UFO for frame gen. Right. Maybe it doesn't even need to be a 3D scene. 3D scene would be the best, probably. Just even a very simple one of animation. But like one thing that we would like to get across in a video at one point in time in the future would be that everyone talks about, frame gen and input latency, but one thing that it really does for you, and John mentioned it earlier, is that it just really reduces persistence blur on your monitor without having to resort to BFI to a degree if you have a high hertz monitor. And that's the one thing I noticed the most with it. Yes, you're getting a greater camera smoothness and all these things, but I really just noticed that my screen is less blurry, in spite of the fact that every other frame is actually wrong in some way, right? Or even more, right, with MFG. So I feel like that is something TestUFO could add if possible, but WebGL makes it problematic because FSR doesn't support OpenGL or WebGL. DLSS definitely doesn't support it. So it would have to maybe be some other thing. Maybe they could introduce some like the lossless scaling algos in there just to show that frame gen does have a place in the discussion of persistence blur reduction, which I think it does. So yeah, really awesome test suite though. I love Mark. Nice. Okay. Well, let's move on. Okay, so we're going to round off the news for this year with the Digital Foundry Community Awards. So every year, some of our supporters on Discord get together and put together a Google Doc that other supporters can contribute to in order to ascertain the winners of 3 different categories: the Game of the Year, and for this year, Hardware of the Year, and the Most Wanted for 2026. A quick shout out here to the irrepressible Alan from the Discord, the legendary Alan. And he's just said, thank you to the team, as this would not be possible without help and input from Zephyr, Frog, Joe, and the beta testers. Loving those hacker aliases, just thinking, go back to the Matrix there, Leo, Trinity, Morpheus, Zephyr, Frog, Joe.
That'd be awesome. Let's go straight into the games of the year. And I'm just going to do a quick roundup of 10 to 5. Number 10, Split Fiction. Number 9, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Number 8, Mario Kart World.
Mazzer.
Mazzer, of course. Hollow Knight Silksong, straight in at number 7. Ghost of Yote hits number 6. Now we're going to go into the top 5. And we're going to start with Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, followed at number 4 by Doom the Dark Ages. Number 3, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Number 2, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, just in terms of what constitutes a year, that qualifies, because for the same reason that Metroid Prime 4 doesn't qualify for this year, because, we need some time to get some votes in for 2025. So that was number 2, a very worthy entrant there. I'm very happy that people remembered it. Bearing in mind it was, strictly speaking, a 2024 game. Number 1, perhaps inevitably, Claire Obscure Expedition 33. This has been a pretty remarkable year for Sandfall, right, John?
Yeah, they've had a really big year. It's a game I actually put off playing for a while due to like being on the road a lot and just not really having time to dig in, and an initial bad impression. But once I actually got into it, it's good. I can understand where the love comes from. Weirdly enough, though, it reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy 13. It's very not quite to the same degree, but it's very much a linear sort of RPG of that style. You're just like always moving forward, through these worlds. And it's a mix of cutscenes and cool battles, but it's very like classic, and the battle system makes some really cool changes and updates that are very, very fun. So it's pretty engaging. I like it a lot, I must say. I'm still only like 8 or 9 hours into it, but I understand the love for sure.
Okay, you recognize it as the number 1 game from our community?
From our community, sure. It's interesting. Actually, this whole list though is interesting because I'm like, oh man, these people are going to be, they're not going to love my game of the year list. I think there's going to be some tears. I think people are going to be like, you are insane. So I am gearing up for that, but we'll see.
Well, the thing about game of the year list is it's personal,
Yeah,
exactly.
Taste is so like, that is it. Like there's like, where's all the RTS games or squad strategy games on this list that I would be?
Yeah, not everything appealed. Like we were talking to Tom the other day, and he was like, "I'm not even going to make a list this year because I didn't like any games this year."
that is a very honest. I've had years like that.
I was like, all right, man, that's cool. Do your
we could
thing.
just have a 10-minute video of Tom just sitting there, occasionally sipping a drink.
Nothing.
Yeah, and then just at the end, I didn't really like any games this year. Still playing Street Fighter 6.
That's literally it. Yeah.
Pretty awesome. Any reactions to the Game of the Year list? It's pretty comprehensive, I think, and obviously recognises a great deal of excellent titles, Alex.
Yeah, I actually, so this year I haven't been able to beat as many games as I would like, but the games that I did get to play that I did really enjoy were actually pretty much on that list. I think Indie is fantastic.
Yeah.
Kingdom Come is requiring way more time than I can possibly dedicate to a game. But for me, it would be a game that I would play obsessively because I really enjoy how you start from dirt rags and nothing. And you're just like being spit on in this world.
Just like real life.
I thought it was so, it is like really funny. The game's intro is like, it's sad because all these people die and etc. But then you like just wake up in a town like half naked and smelly and everyone hates you. And I just laughed so much at that. Very good game. Claire Obscure was one of the first games where I actually felt something emotional during the initial 30 minutes. Games usually don't make me feel much of any emotions other than I want to play you more. But like actually like invested, like emotional, like, oh, this is a very tragic story. I thought it was very tragic. And remind me of a lot of good like apocalyptic fiction that you see out there. John, it's kind of funny, John. You say it reminds you of Final Fantasy 13.
Yep.
It reminds me of like Neon Genesis Evangelion, actually, like kind of like world coming to an end over a certain amount of time. It kind of reminded me of that, but no mecha. I really like that. And what are some other games? Well, obviously, I really love Tempest Rising this year, which is not anywhere near this list. But most people don't play Command & Conquer RTS, but I thought it did it so well. And the story was really fun. And the factions are so different from each other that it is just a joy to play. So that is a game I really like this year.
Alex, Tempest Rising is number 39 on the list with 62 votes.
Oh, well, someone liked it. That's great. Congrats. I love you.
Okay. Let's move on to the hardware of the year. And again, I'm going to just skip through the top 10 first of all. Straight in at number 10, the Alienware AW2725DF monitor. I should look that up, but I'm sure it's a pretty good one.
Is that the WOLED or the QD?
I'm not sure. But straight in at number 9 is the Samsung Odyssey OLED G9. And number 8 is the Asus Xbox Ally X handheld. And straight ahead of that, number 7, Apple M5 MacBook Pro. I guess we're gonna try and get a review of that because M5 silicon for entry level silicon actually looks really, really cool. Number 6, the Ryzen AI Max Plus 395 Strix Halo.
Rolls off the
glad
tongue.
to see it recognized there. And number 5, AMD Ryzen 9 9950 X3D, which was the winner of the Golden Joysticks hardware of the year, ahead of Switch 2, which I presented at the Golden Joysticks, which I sat down directly after presenting that award, and someone said to me, "This Ryzen is it any good?" So it's like, I just said, "Well, yeah, I've got one. I bought one." It's like, that was enough to say, okay, that is good. Number 4, Analog 3D, the Retro N64. It's pretty good stuff. Nice to see that recognized so high up the list, right, John?
Yeah, it's a good one.
Number 3, the AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT. Number 2, only a few ahead of it in terms of score, the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 1590. And balance has been restored to the force with hardware of the year from the Digital Foundry community is the Nintendo Switch 2 handheld, or hybrid console, if you like. It's a pretty good list, I think. Obviously, the other thing at the Golden Joysticks was, which kind of interested me, was that somehow a Western Digital SSD made it into the nominations there, which I'm not quite sure how that.
At least it wasn't a Seagate. No offense to Seagate. You know, like, geez, what?
That was it. The thing that was quite amusing is everybody was sufficiently lubricated with alcohol at the time. When the SSD came up, there was like a colossal drunken roar of perhaps ironic approval, but that did make me chuckle. But number 1, I think it's fair enough that Nintendo Switch 2 gets the number 1 position, even though from a hardware perspective, you do have a few issues with the screen, John, which we've talked about ad nauseum.
Yeah, ad nauseum. So, like, I mean, obviously the system's great as a game platform, but yeah. Yeah,
I think, the thing that I'd like to say about the Switch 2 is that there were, going into it, we had issues. There was a whole massive, multi-year debate about the process load of the processor and how it wouldn't be any good, and how there's no way that they could actually get a power efficient design from a Samsung 8 nanometer / 10 nanometer processor. And it comes in and, basically you're playing Star Wars Outlaws with ray tracing at like 10 watts, which is just crazy. I mean, they proved us wrong in the best possible way, in terms of that particular, stat point there. It's a nice system. Obviously it can't be the perfect system, but, we're seeing some interesting stuff with it. And it actually turns out that, Alex, DLSS, despite the fact that it's using a compromised version of DLSS in many games, is actually proving to be a bit of a game changer for the hardware.
Yeah, it's making a lot of ports way better than they otherwise would be if they had to make resolution concessions that they have to do, which is the point of it, and it's really great. I always thoroughly enjoy too when we look at it like vis-a-vis like Xbox Series S, and we're like, or PS4, and we're like, we actually prefer the image quality here. I find that always enjoyable. It just goes to prove that it's it's not the power, it's how you use it. Mm-hmm. And sorry, but one thing that I notice is the lack of mid and lower spec GPUs here. Like they're just like the ultra high end for both AMD and Nvidia, which I think says way too much about the market. Like imagine if the 5070 Ti were cheaper or something like that, or if the 9060 XT had more power. Like all these things. Like, we just don't live in that world.
Not anymore. No. And that's something that's just going to continue as far as I can see. And this is why we have FSR Redstone, and this is why we have DLSS Reconstruction and all of these, multi-frame gen. That's the reason I think it's basically happening, and will continue to happen. I think the one thing though is that when prices actually reached MSRP, and in certain cases like 9070 XT and 5070 actually dipped below MSRP, I'm actually, in light of everything that's happening now in the hardware scene, I'm actually okay with that now. It's kind of weird how circumstances change, but this is the world we live in at this point. And I think basically everything that anybody is making now with above 8 gigs of VRAM is actually a pretty good product worthy of consideration. That's kind of weird. But 5070, for example, went below MSRP, and suddenly that kind of switches up the value dynamics a bit. Nobody's suggesting that it's 4090 level performance anymore, which helps.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the final category here, most wanted. Let's just do the top 5 here. Number 5 is Saros from Housemarque on PlayStation 5. Followed swiftly by Wolverine, Marvel's Wolverine. Followed swiftly after that by Resident Evil Requiem. Number 2. A surprise for sure, but a welcome one, is 007 First Light. I'm actually sort of potentially quite excited about that based on what I've seen. Hoping it could be really, really good. The demo we saw had a few performance problems, but it was actually looking really compelling. But it probably comes as no surprise whatsoever to see that the most wanted game for 2026 is indeed the same as the most wanted game for 2025. It just slipped a year. Grand Theft Auto 6. Alex, thoughts?
Well, I'm a little disconnected there. Other than James Bond, I'm actually interested in James Bond because we haven't had a good James Bond game in a really long time, and I just really want to see their take on this established design and character, which I was initially worried about. Then seeing the demo assuaged every fear I had, more or less, which was great. But with GTA, it's just kind of funny. Like, I think I was really into GTA right around when GTA 4 launched, and definitely played the ports of GTA 3, and I kind of was into it then. But I just the whole cultural zeitgeist about like that game just escapes me. So I don't get super excited other than the rendering technology.
Right. Mm-hmm. I'm going to completely go back on what I just said and talk about the rest of the top 10 because there are some interesting games in there. Forza Horizon 6 comes in at number 6. Fable number 7. Pragmata, John, is number 8.
Oh yeah. Right.
It's quite amusing here to see Half-Life 3 is straight in at number 9 on the most wanted, presumably because nobody really believes. A lot of people don't believe it actually exists at the moment. Number 10, Onimusha Way of the Sword. Let's just continue. Number 11, Gears of War E-Day, which is something I'm really, really excited about. And, well, I'm just Halo Campaign Evolved is there, but it's way, way down. I'd have to actually do some physical counting to figure out exactly where it is there. But it got the same amount of votes as Resonance, A Plague Tale Legacy, which I'm really looking forward to. And indeed, the same amount of score as Denture Attack. that crazy game we saw at Gamescom, which
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so some call outs there. Let's go to a supporter question on this from Benandi. A-up redux! ! Despite another year of hashtag status struggle, layoffs / studio closures, project cancellations, and Windows grievances. What have been some of the highlights of the year? What are you all hoping that 2026 will bring / change? Cheers and thanks for another 12 months of amazing hashtag content. John, what do you want from 2026 and what were your highlights of 2025?
My highlights of 2025? So from 2026, I want Half-Life 3.
Right.
Above all, it's just because it's a completely unknown thing and I'm very interested to see where that goes. And there'll be plenty of other awesome games along the way, no doubt. So I'm excited for those. And yeah, obviously I'm very curious about GTA 6 as well. I can't lie. So
yeah.
From this year though,
don't want to spoil your games of the year video.
I'm not going to spoil my games of the year.
You've already flag posted will annoy a lot of people.
How about we'll say on a hardware side then, this LG 45 GX9 monitor that I got, which is my favorite monitor I've ever owned. It's extremely good. I really, really love it. That size, I love the curve in the end. It's really just perfect for my desk space. The performance of it is just nuts. I love using it every day. So it has made both gaming and working better because it finally gets a resolution as high as I wanted. And that dual mode stuff is great. And I love the size. 45-inch ultra wide is a really awesome size.
Nice. So, Alex?
Games for me, like I said, Tempest Rising, but for this year. But I also really liked Transformer model in general. I was really happy to see Ray Reconstruction reach a level where it wasn't like questionable. You could see what it was doing that you wanted, but you didn't want all the bad stuff. And it's like, it really helps that it got rid of a lot of that with Ray Reconstruction. So I really liked that this year, having Transformer model out there. Because now when a game comes out with lots of RT effects, I'm like, just use Ray Reconstruction. That's what I keep thinking, which is great. I also really liked FSR 4 launch because we got a really high quality upscaler there that finally, if you're on AMD, you didn't have to really worry about it anymore other than just game support. And so you're like, they're not parity in all ways now, but like you're at this point where like it's good enough where you turn it on and everyone should be happy. I think that's the point we're really at there. That made me really happy as a hardware reviewer this year. For 2026, I am like John. Half-Life 3 is probably the game I'll be most interested in for that year for the most part. But I'm also very interested in Dawn of War 4 to see what they bring to the table, because now there's going to be 2 Warhammer 40k RTSs coming out, which is really weird. Like you just don't get any for like 15 years or something, and all of a sudden you get like 2 of the biggest ones from some of the biggest names in the industry. It's totally bizarre. So I'm excited for that. But other than that, I think we still haven't seen what 2026 will bring us, because GTA left like this gaping hole in the year. That still has yet to be filled to some degree with announcements. So I think we'll see those as the year persists on, or maybe we'll see more delays because GTA is now at some weird part of the year where it wasn't earlier. So maybe games will slip into the next year. Yeah,
I'm just going to end by saying thank you to everyone for supporting us as we moved into being a fully independent media outlet, because let's just say that it was a bit of a gamble, right? I mean, it was basically a case of saying, right, okay, I'm going to put my life savings into buying back control of Digital Foundry. And we had no real idea of what would happen when we said that we were going to do this. And obviously, my business partner, Rupert Lohman, made an equally large bet as well. Thus far, the support in terms of Patreon has just been fantastic. The support, the messages and the support we've had from the games industry has been great as well. And we've been able to do things. We've hired people, something we haven't done in the last 5 years. I mean, Oliver was on a sort of hugely elaborate freelance contract because we weren't actually allowed to hire anyone. We've changed that. We're bringing in more people. We've just put up a job application up on our Patreon for a junior producer who can actually help us to remove the sort of admin overhead that's sort of holding us back a little bit, and actually allow us to focus more on content and enable us to get more of those commercial deals that we kind of need to expand and grow. So, the last 4 or 5 months of independence have just been absolutely fantastic. And the support from, the audience via Patreon has just been phenomenal. I'm just humbled and blown away, to be frank. And I'm really happy that we all made the right choice. And what can I say? Just a heartfelt thank you. But that's it for talking about the news. Should we go straight on into supporter Q&A? Yeah.
Sure, let's go.
Okay.
That's a yes.
But that's it for the news for this year. So let's go straight on into supporter Q&A, which is the part of the show where every week I post on Patreon to ask our expanded group of supporters for their questions for the team. We answer the best, or rather the ones we're best equipped to answer. And we're going to kick off with this one from Dudley the Gentleman. Hi, DF team. In the hypothetical future where the Steam Deck launches, will handhelds actually be powerful enough to run Cyberpunk 2077 with RT Overdrive and or current gen titles with path-tracing support? Alex?
Wow.
Probably not.
I mean, I just say probably not, because even on the cards that support PT which is every NVIDIA card since 2018, right? Mostly every. I always forget about the GTX.
Yeah, 1600.
Those weird.
Yeah,
I always forget about those, but let's be real. And a lot of those you can turn it on, but would you rather if you could get like 60 FPS without it being on? And that is the question. I'm pretty sure an NVIDIA handheld that came out in the future, you could turn on PT, but would you want to, when you could turn on just maybe RT, like one RT effect, and get a 60 FPS game? And I think the answer is, I personally would always go for 60 FPS in that instance, just because especially because the internal resolutions would have to be pretty darn low to support that power envelope. So I think the answer is, of course you could turn it on, but would you want to at that point in time? And I think I would just advise most people no. But I think it's possible in whenever NVIDIA puts out a handheld, I think that's when it's going to be possible.
Yeah, I mean, you could run path tracing with an RTX 3050 at 30 frames per second with a very, very low internal resolution. So that's kind of like the ballpark for what it would need to do. And I think maybe that might be asking a bit too much, certainly for what we can actually see visible on the horizon in terms of handhelds. But again, we have seen the Switch 2 produce Star Wars Outlaws, which is using ray tracing at 30 frames per second with a decent resolution. So kind of who knows at this point? I mean, path tracing though is a hugely intensive endeavor. Not sure it's even worth it, to be honest, but it might be funny just to try it. John, any thoughts?
That seems like a good way to burn your hands right now. But at the same time, maybe if it's a cold winter day and you want to play outside, it's a great way to keep warm and be able to keep enjoying your gaming.
The next gen Strix Halo, which is like years away, which presumably would be based on RDNA 5, that might be quite comedic to actually run.
Yeah, you could do it there probably, actually. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
By then we'll have 17-inch screens. It's going to be awesome.
Backpack battery.
The backpack battery is back, baby.
That would be fantastic.
Nothing will touch the dude that mounted the CRT and desktop with the 4.1 speaker system on his back using that wood frame.
I don't know. You have to do a lot of squats.
We have to go back.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. This one from Salman. Hello, DF crew. It's fair to say that many UE5 PC games have had issues over the past few years. If you're a developer aiming for a realistic visual design, is there a more performant game engine available for licensing? Is CryEngine a realistic alternative? Alex, what are your thoughts on UE 5.5 and above going forward? Alex, what are your thoughts?
That's fun. I don't think there's almost any competitive engine in this space at all that is easily licensable at all. Like,
yes,
really, there's a reason why they have so much money. They just have this Fortnite money, and they buy all the graphics engineers and systems engineers, and they build this engine, which is kind of a behemoth in a lot of ways, and in both good and bad. So I don't think CryEngine is a realistic alternative anymore. Other than the legacy fact that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 came out on that engine, I think that is a legacy factoid. I don't think that is because, if they had enough money, maybe, and enough time, they might have switched to get a better feature set and all these things. Who knows, right? But that's just kind of the way it was. I don't think it needed to be that way. I think 5, not even 5.5, I think 5.7 and above is probably where we're going to see a lot better situation regarding all the issues we've talked about over the years. I don't know what they'll do about image quality for 60 FPS games on console. That's been another, like, we always talk about like stutter struggle, etc., because we have a sign of PC focus regarding the Unreal Engine issues. But a lot of things that people complain about on consoles is that Unreal Engine 5 games have bad image quality. I don't know if that's going to be changing over time very greatly, but I think all the CPU related issues are going to get a lot better over time. It is just a shame that the engine became licensable in a state like you could download the 5.0 feature set to make games on for current gen consoles at a time when it was maybe not really good performance wise to make really great experiences across all different game design types. Like, I don't think it was an open world engine until like 5.4ish. Because just the very basic nature of moving across an open world pre that was just awful, regardless of hardware. So I feel like it's a shame that it was licensable at the time it was, and everyone grabbed onto it. But, I think it's going to be a lot better after CDPR gets their hands on it and pushes back a lot of things into main branch, which they've been doing. Mm-hmm. So that's where I feel.
What about this, Alex? Basically, any engine that can do overcast clouds and screen space reflections and shiny floors will deliver you that ultra realistic visual design.
You know what? That's true. You know what? In that case, tons of engines do that. Junkiest engines do that. So let's do
it. Any thoughts on this, John?
It's all about Godot, baby.
Godot, yeah. I mean, I think Godot is cool, but I just don't think if you're going for like a ultra realistic modern AAA game, I don't know if it has that support.
You're 100% right out. I just don't see any other solution than Unreal Engine at this point. It is what it is.
Right.
Epic has vacuumed up the tech industry. So you either have engineers that want to work on their own proprietary tech, and so they go to the companies where that's allowed, or you join Epic.
Right.
Unity's still out there doing its thing, but it has not really been that successful competing in that area. The one area where Unity is actually really good, though, is mobile VR. Unity Engine is awesome for games that run on, say, the Quest series of headsets. I think it's much more performant than Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine works on there, but it's got... it usually has image quality issues. Shader compilation is super long, which, by the way, compiling shaders on a VR headset sucks.
My gosh.
Right? Because nobody wants to sit there uncomfortably staring at a bar with a headset on for 10 minutes. It's not cool. I don't like that. But Unity games never seem to have that issue. They're very, very quick in comparison, and they run great and with good image quality. And if you're targeting consoles and PC, I feel like UE5 is kind of just you just kind of have to do it. And if you know what you're doing, the results can be pretty freaking great. Like Unreal Engine can produce awesome visuals. That's not in question. It's just about getting it to run well. And that, that's difficult.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question. This one from Geeky Dud. Good day, gents! ! Question mainly for John. Mega Man is finally back! What are your thoughts on what we've seen from dual override so far? What do you want to see from the game? Also, with there being a rumoured second game in development for the 40th anniversary, what do you want that to be? X9, Legends 3, a new sub-series altogether. Thank you for all of your hard work. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year!
Yeah, man. Like, I'm very happy to see it come back, and it does seem to be the classic style Mega Man game, and I'm okay with that. Like, I don't come to Mega Man with the idea that it needs to reinvent itself every time, right? Like, when I go to Mega Man, I want classic Mega Man. It used to be a series that appeared all the time, but that's not the case anymore. It's a rare treat. So just having some proper Mega Man actions, that's all I need. It look beautiful, good level design, plays great. That's what I want. But I also wouldn't mind seeing them continue some of the other stuff. Legends 3 would be awesome, of course. They could try their hand at a role-playing game again, like they did with Command Mission back in the day, which is actually a pretty awesome, turn-based RPG based on Mega Man X. I like that.
It's funny.
But yeah, I'm just happy to see more Mega Man out there. I'm always a fan. So,
Alex, any thoughts?
Mega Man DOS reboot right now. Give me that port. Night Dive Mega Man DOS today. That's all I gotta say.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to this question from Matt GPT. Following on from the DF graphics of the year and some comments about it not being valid because Doom requires a higher end rig to be able to path trace. What? What would be your choice of best graphics on low-end hardware? Maybe the deck as a baseline. At that level, is it more about art style, or is Metroid Prime 4 on Switch 1 already the answer to this? Well, that's an interesting question. Low-level hardware graphics of the year. I'm not sure the fact that Doom doesn't require a higher-end rig to play normally and still look fantastic. But the concept that we can't include it or put it at number one because, path tracing is too onerous, that doesn't really fit the brief of graphics of the year. Lower end hardware, Alex, what do you think?
I mean, dude, maybe like instead of just honorable mentioning a bunch of Switch games, maybe we could just have a game graphics of the year on power constrained devices or something. I've really no idea, but it also seems like a stupid video idea at the same time.
That's the Switch 2.
Yeah, it's like I just of course, but as soon as you start having a lack of power to do certain things, it becomes more about what you do with it and how you obfuscate that with art decisions. So yes, it becomes more of an art style thing, maybe, but even then I would say that is very, like at the end of the day, when we do a graphics of the year, we are not like putting out like criteria and saying, if you don't have this feature or have this feature, you are this or that or other on this list. We don't do that. So
I think, Alex, this only works for me when you're talking about consoles, because those are fixed platforms with strict limitations. That's why I put Eartheon on there, because you know specifically what that hardware can do. And okay, you match what was accomplished to what the hardware is. The PC is just too much of an open box for that to work. Like, you just arbitrarily pick some low-end PC? There's still lower-end PCs. It's just like there's no easy way to just define that, right? And in the case of Doom, it doesn't even hold water because, one, we acknowledge that it looks amazing without path tracing because it already has great ray tracing. Two, it's very performant with that ray tracing, like extremely so. Like the lowest end ray tracing supported cards can run it fine. It looks great on consoles as well. And it delivers it all, at 60 FPS or more. Like, I don't know what more you want from that. That's the perfect fusion of extremely good performance with great visual quality.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, it all comes down to what you're quite right. PC is so diverse in terms of hardware capabilities, we've still got this discussion going on, Alex, that the 60 series card isn't an entry level card.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I don't know.
which,
well, what do you...
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? How do you define entry level? Surely if it's the lowest class card, in any given range, it therefore is entry level within that range. I guess you could say the 50-50 you can go lower.
I forget. Yeah, but that's pretty recent.
Yeah.
Isn't the 50-50 pretty recent? Yeah.
But even that's like 40-60 levels of performance.
It is very much so. I just, I guess one thing, like, I think it just it's all about hurt feelings for some reason. Like the comment, thank you, Matt GPT, for covering this comment, because we are actually talking a lot about it, but it is a bit about hurt feelings, like just people who feel like something wasn't included or doesn't align with their opinion. And that's also perfectly fine, because at the end of the day, when we get to the bottom part of the list where we start ranking things, we start making semi-arbitrary decisions based upon personal preferences at that point, right? Like very heavily. And we try and what we do is we argue about things. Like when Roger Ebert or any sort of great film critic, he doesn't say like this shot in this movie by Martin Scorsese is a 4 out of 5. Like he says, he's trying to articulate it across multiple paragraphs, or whoever they are. And it's about the argument winning you over. And that's what we try and do at the end of the video when we try and argue for things being ranked. But, I don't think as soon as you start doing that across, like saying like, if we did a best PS5 graphics video or something like that, we could do that, but that, I don't know if do we care about that?
I want to do a
best PS5
most graphics video.
The most graphics. We could play like what is that even, John? Like the most textures this year.
Yeah.
Goes to Call of Duty and it's streaming textures.
Man, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. I don't know what to say about this. People getting upset about choices and personal choices or the choices of a team. I just find it utterly bizarre. There seems to be this need for people to agree. There needs to be consensus, otherwise you're wrong. That's not the way it works. And diversity in opinions is actually quite important. Crazy stuff, I know.
Just saying.
Yeah, it's like I was saying the other week where I didn't care, where people said, I was asked if I care about what other reviewers think, and I said no. And it's because you need diversity of opinion. There's no need. Why do you need everybody to tell you the same thing? It just does not make sense in any way, shape or form. I think going back to Matt GPT's question here, Metroid Prime 4 on Switch 1 is pretty good. There we go.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it is.
Not bad.
We all said that, I think, in the video.
Okay, let's go on to the next question. This one comes from Snorkel Bandit. What up, DGF? What would be your first choice for a 7th gen console setup in the modern era? Raw dogging it on a 4K TV, 4K with a retro tink, a 720p screen to get a nice native render resolution match on more games, / a classic CRT. Happy holidays, gents. In theory, this one's pretty straightforward, though, isn't it, John?
Yeah, there's really two things. One, I think a retro tink is a great choice here on a modern TV. A second, more difficult thing would be something like the FW900, a proper widescreen CRT monitor that can natively support these resolutions. That's probably the best way to play it in terms of what you will get visually. But retro tink to a large screen with nearest neighbor scaling is second. 720p flat panels, though, basically don't exist. I wish they did, but they basically never made them. The only ones that ever existed were freaking like DLP projectors, both like rear projector and front projector. But actual 720p 1280 by 720 LCD panels, plasma TVs, they never really made them. And I don't know why. They always did this like 1366 by 768 or whatever. I think it was because of overscan, which was only useful for like television broadcasts, but like for games and such, it sucks because everything had to be interpolated slightly to reach 768p. So it just makes image quality worse across the board. So I really wish somebody had made a 720p screen from that era, especially like a nice plasma with a true 1280 by 720p screen would be awesome.
Right.
Okay. So RetroTink, you're talking nearest neighbor 3x3 upscaling, right?
Yeah.
What about the
That's
new
what I did for the
CRT
360
stuff?
video. What's that?
CRT,
The CRT
shader?
stuff that's being added to RetroTink. Could that be used with a 720p input, or is it just for lower resolutions?
You can. It's not as useful there. Like I've done it where you like sort of simulate. You can use like lines and stuff to like simulate like flat panel like pixels. You know, because you don't want it to look like a CRT. Instead, you try to make it look more like it gives the impression that you're looking at a large native 720p screen to a degree. And it's an interesting approach to take, but it does kind of dim the image a bit. And, you know, it's not perfect, but there's definitely some potential there to do something that makes it look more like you're looking at a 720p picture on a 720p pixel screen.
Yeah. This is also just a hard gen to go back to because the upscaling, but also unless you're playing very specific games, like
that's what
the performance of these games is going to be a bit crap, some of them. So it's like a little bit of a crapshoot when you go back to this era. It's not as nice as the PS2, right, where you get like 60 in a lot of games. So like here, I really would be curious what games you are playing there. And the question is maybe you can find them elsewhere in a better condition, like Xbox back compat or PC version. Or even emulation, depending upon how far. Because that's actually, RPCS3 has been great for this, where you can start playing those classic games maybe with better performance than they had. Better than the 360 version, better than the PS3 version. So maybe that Snorkel Bandit, unless you really just really want to have that experience of loading up that console.
I love addressing people by their nicknames like that, just so like nonchalantly in a you know, Snorkel Bandit. I was thinking of
Oh dear. Yeah. Well, I'm just going to do it again. Neo, Trinity, Morpheus, Snorkel Bandit.
Snorkel
Bandit. Yeah. I think he dies in the first scene, right?
It turns out Neo wasn't the one. It was Snorkel Bandit all along.
Yeah, imagine the scene with like, like when Morpheus is offering the pills and he's like, Snorkel Bandit, you must choose between one of these.
Okay, let's move on to the final question. This one from Gorguts. Yes, Digital Foundry, since all of you have such a deep love for Copilot, I thought I would ask Copilot to generate a question based on this Patreon call for questions. Here's the response Copilot gave.
Oh, gosh.
Absolutely. Based on the topics mentioned in the post, here's a question that could spark a great discussion on DF Direct Weekly. With Half-Life 3 rumoured as a launch title for Steam Machine, do you think Valve is finally ready to commit to hardware as a serious platform? And how might this impact the handheld PC space dominated by Ayaneo and GPD? Since this is a better question than any one of us could conjure in our minds, can we just all get supporter questions to be Copilot generated? In fact, let's get Copilot to answer all of those questions as well. Man, yeah, that would put us out of a job, which is whole thing about... thing is, he says get Copilot to answer it. I've just put that question into ChatGPT, and I've got like a sort of 1,000 word essay.
I'm sorry. I've actually put it into Copilot.
Oh, you have?
Excuse me. It's directly in, and it has produced a significant amount of information.
Oh God.
Oh, now okay. Then the app became unresponsive. Now it's responsive again. Okay, it has a direct answer. If Half-Life 3 truly launches alongside the Steam Machine in 2026, it would signal Valve's most serious hardware commitment yet. This move could reshape the handheld PC market by strengthening Valve's ecosystem, putting pressure on Ayaneo and GPT to differentiate their hardware through hardware innovation and niche features. Man.
Incredible how it takes
the insight there.
A premise that is also wrong in the question, and it doesn't say the question doesn't make sense. It just goes.
But Alex,
like someone's like, why is the sky green? And it's like, the sky is green because, it's really stupid.
But Copilot says, would you like me to sketch out two possible scenarios? One where Valve succeeds in dominating the handheld living room space, and one where Ayaneo GPD carve out a premium niche despite Valve's push.
Wow. Okay. Well, actually, that latter point, fairly fairly good, except for the fact that Steam Deck exists and dominates the handheld space.
I like how it says bottom line, Valve is finally serious about hardware, using Half-Life 3 as the ultimate carrot.
The implication is that they could have also like used a stick instead of a carrot.
Absolutely.
Like that's
carrot on the stick.
Works.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're going to leave it there. I could read out ChatGPT's response to that, but it's just more nonsense.
It won't win.
It's just total nonsense. Anyway, that was it. That was the last question, and therefore the end of the show and the end of the year. Join us, please, next year for more of the same, but with less Copilot involved. Seriously, though, really hope you've enjoyed this year's content, and if you did enjoy this one, please do like, subscribe, share, ring the bell for notifications for you, potential algorithmic boosts for us. But that's all from us for this year. Thanks for watching and supporting Digital Foundry.